welcome to the show, everybody. And today I'm joined by Clare Hughes and Liana Loporto. Liana is the current president of the NAEA. So welcome, Liana. And Clare, also an independent agent, and both together run the Women in Estate Agency Facebook group and podcast. So welcome, ladies, and thanks for joining.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
That's great. So a couple of questions, if we'll crack on with those, and well, however you want to do it, jump in, whatever you need to, either or. We can fight over the questions. So first question really to both, is estate agency now more of a level playing field for women, or do you think more still needs to be done?
Shall I go with that one, Liana?
Start, Claire. I'll jump in there. You know I'm going to butt in anyway.
Well, compared to when, compared to 5 years ago, 20 years ago, I would say that it's probably better now than it was 10 years ago. But I think there's still more work to be done. And I think an excellent example of that was the recent case when Alice Thompson won her claim for, I think it was constructive dismissal on the grounds of but it was the gender bias, and it wasn't. She was earning very well, but they did things that made it very difficult for her as a mother of a baby, and to work in that environment. And she won her case. So if those kind of cases are coming to court still, then I say yes, there is still work to be done.
I think there's a lot of judgment on that case, but for me, it's not the case. It's the comments following the case that shows that there's still a long way to go. In particular, you can see that there was extremely misogynistic comments following that case, and it's the feedback, and that shows you, it has come. There's a big difference. I've been in this industry for 25 years now, and there's a big difference, and I can see there's a difference, and big steps have been taken in the right direction, but there's
still more to be done.
There's still more to be done. But you know what? The conversation is going on, and I think that's really important. And there are more role models within the industry. So yeah, but ultimately, there's still a long way to go.
We talked about there's more role models in the industry. How can we get more women in positions of power within the industry? What's your thoughts on that?
First of all, I'm not sure if it needs to be power. I mean, in positions of seniority, authority, leadership, power always sort of suggests strength, and then is that a more masculine sort of look at it? But so, although I know that ultimately it is power, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, I guess women have got to learn to put themselves forward for these positions and not always assume that it's not right for them. We've talked about this many times in our Facebook group. Women it's that imposter syndrome, and I think at board level people need to be looking and identifying talent across the board, and don't overlook the women that you've got there. If you look at how few women there are, this is obviously not just agency, but how few women there are on at board level and FTSE 100 companies. It's minute. I haven't looked at the recent stats, but it's tiny.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because it is about showing women that it's possible to have those senior positions but still be a parent, because if they choose to be, because we as women, we have the lion's share of the childcare, and there haven't been women in senior positions that have shown that is possible without dialing the male up. And because of this Facebook group, we are speaking to some incredible women that have really had to juggle, and the juggle is real, and have a family, have a career, and they have done it successfully. And I don't think that journey or those journeys have been talked about enough within our industry to set an example for the younger women coming into the industry. So what I would say is, if COVID has done anything, it's really opened up the conversation position and really seen that it's possible to retain some incredible talent where women will be thinking about leaving. And a lot of women we speak to in our Facebook group have left our industry because they think it's just not possible to remain in it, because the men are going to get ahead and they're going to go into those positions, because we have to take a step back in those formative years for our children, and the ones that don't are left in the wings anyway, because they're not given those positions because they think that they're going to leave to have families. So it's a difficult conversation, and
Yeah,
I
it is
think
a difficult conversation. Yeah.
and the more we speak about it and the more we shout about it and say, look, this is possible, you can do both and you can be a good parent. And then it's a societal change. And we say this, don't we, Claire?
Yeah.
It's about how society regards being a parent in the workplace, because we're experiencing it in our industry that, you know, the more flexibility you have, the more flexibility you're given as an employee, as a person, the more loyalty you show back and the more success you bring to the company, because it's a relationship and it's all about the culture. And if the culture changes, then that will support more women and show them that it's possible to remain.
How were things, to Liana first, for you when you first joined the property industry? I mean, you said you've been in it 25 years now, but looking back, how were things when you first joined?
It was, you know, I've been in this, it was work hard, play hard, keep up.
Yeah.
Burn the candle at both ends. I've always been a really hard worker, but you know, estate agency was really good fun. I just couldn't see how you change that when you're not part of the go to the pub on a Friday and do all the, you know, do all the things that you do as an agent to be part of your team, because then as a family person, it's very different. And as you said, with the culture. So I found that when I had young children, that journey was close to impossible. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to be really good at doing both. And you practically burn yourself out. And if I had the role models that I now have within our Women in Estate Agency group, and I was able to drop a message and say, how did you do this? I would have found that journey much easier. And that's what Claire and I said. We need this to be able to have that safe place where people can ask these questions.
And share ideas, presumably. I'm sure there's a lot of ideas being shared all the time.
But it's often something that they don't feel comfortable sharing with a wider audience because for fear of criticism, I suppose. And you know, coming back to those misogynistic comments that were made on Alistair Thompson's case, they don't want any of that. So it's a safe place. We call it safe, which suggests that it's dangerous elsewhere. But no, it's not dangerous, but it's, you know,
you've got something in common. You're able to speak to each other and share those ideas in a safe environment. So tell us a bit about the numbers on the Facebook group and the podcast. How many have you got in there on the sort of things that are discussed?
Right. We've got coming up for 1,200 members in the Facebook group.
Wow.
So it's been going just about 13 months now. So we're quite pleased with that and a bit taken aback. And it's now, you know, obviously lots of contributors now, which is great. It's not all estate agents, it's people that are sort of around, so conveyancers, copywriters, social media. So, you know, again, you can get help with that.
People connected to the industry as well, not necessarily agents.
And the podcast, I don't know any of the stats on the podcast, I'm afraid, to be honest.
But that's what happened. The group was such a success, but at the start we had a little bit of criticism saying that it was not inclusive of men, and we also thought this conversation is an even stronger conversation if it involves men. So the podcast came about by saying, let us see how we can make our industry a better place for women, but we also want men to be part of this conversation. And that's when we started the podcast, and it's been brilliant. We've spoken to Stephen Brown, we've spoken to the Bruce brothers, so it's been, you know, it's just they have a super mum and a really like hard nut mum and 4 older sisters, so it was really good to just open the conversation to men and say, how do we do this together, rather than this kind of, we're not you know, this handbag wielding women that don't want to have men as part of the conversation. We want this conversation to be have strength because we want to make a difference and make it an easier place for women to juggle it and to remain in it and to reach those senior positions.
And if it's going to be a societal change, then it has to, by definition,
exactly
include men, doesn't it? So yeah. So it's been great fun though.